Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Game with Hal. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome a special guest by the name of Guy Haberman. He is known for doing Big Ten football and Big Ten basketball and some of his exciting calls. You wouldn't want to miss this exciting episode of Beyond the Game with Hal featuring Guy Haberman. So, first off for you, what were your steps in getting into the sports media world?
The first thing I did was I was in high school and I started calling my local high school games on local TV. I lived in a small town called Davis, which has one high school and a local TV station where somebody's dad used to record the football games, and they would air on Wednesdays with no audio. So it was just the video. So I called the local station and asked if I could talk on the game, and they were like, sure. It was a very small operation. They had just gotten some new equipment that would let them do that. So that's how I started.
Right. And then continuing your voice in sports, you went to Fresno State, and that's not necessarily known for a big broadcasting school. How did you continue to work there to make sure that you could have a career in sports broadcasting?
Yeah, the first thing I did, I show up as a freshman, and my first week I went to the student radio station. And they told me the program director there was a really sharp guy, Joe Moore, and he told me, yeah, we do. I think they carry volleyball and softball and women's basketball and some baseball. He said, why don't you bring me a tape? So I went back to my dorm room and I had a Giants game on TV that I recorded, and I made a tape and I took him the tape and I started doing games for them, and then I started doing games for the local radio station that carried some more of those, college events. And we started doing high school football games on Friday nights, which Fresno State is in California's Central Valley, which is a big high school football culture there. And then I started doing local radio shows and, little TV shows, whatever, high school football, and started doing, at the time there was I guess maybe there still is a league called the WAC. We were doing football games for them and Fresno State pre and post game shows. And so I was off and running.
Right. And then starting from an early age in high school, doing all this stuff, how do you think you improved on your tape by watching yourself and seeing what you could have improved on and seeing where you made a mistake or you used a word too many times or you got a play wrong to build on and further your broadcasting game?
It's a great question. I think if I don't want to say people are afraid of criticism, but criticism has a very negative connotation for some people. And I would say the one thing I learned pretty quickly was if you listen, no one's going to listen to you or watch your stuff more than you. Or at least it should be that way. And if that's the case, then there's probably not a criticism that somebody can give you that should hurt. You should either hear, if you really study yourself, then any criticism you get or feedback, constructive criticism, right? You'll know right away, ooh, that's actually really helpful. That's really insightful. I need to think about that. I need to use that. My feeling is nobody's going to be harder on me than me. And I guess for something it doesn't mean you beat yourself down necessarily, but it just, nobody should know your material better than you. And in this case, your material is the mistakes you make, the crutches you have, the things you're working on. And so, I was doing minor league baseball in Fresno. The Giants AAA team was there at the time. And what was great about baseball was it was every day. So every day you could walk in with how, it sounds cliche, but it's what is, not 1% better, which I love people saying get 1% better, but be more specific. What is one thing I'm focused on today? Just one thing I'm trying to get better at. But so that is my advice, is if you watch yourself or listen to yourself a lot, then you will know. You'll be the hardest critic. You'll know better than anybody else when you screw up, how to fix it. And I think it just makes you get feedback or criticism or advice. Sometimes, as you've asked people for a lot of advice in doing interviews, some of it sounds really general. Like, how do I actually put that advice or feedback into action? And I think the more that you study yourself, the more that external feedback, you start to see places where it actually can be pretty specific.
Right. And it's not just taking feedback from these other people and saying, oh, you need to be sharper here or sharper here, but in a wider variety. You also have to kind of know where you can improve on and not have the mindset that you're already at the peak. And it's just another thing with me for asking questions. Instead of being broad and having a wide variety of answers, it's getting that small percent better and asking that little detail to get that information out of people. But for you, you grew up in California and now you're covering the 49ers. You have a podcast where you talk a lot about them, post on YouTube. How do you think that came about, and how is it like talking about a team that you love and enjoy talking about?
Well, it came about because I moved to the Bay Area in 2012 to do radio. I was doing local radio. And so I was doing a radio show every day, every night. And a lot of it, we learned there's the Giants, there's the Warriors, but if you just talk 49ers locally on the radio, that was the best thing you could do. Like talking the NFL was the best thing you could do. So then when I left radio to do podcasting several years ago, that's where we focused, was on that. And it just became, on the internet, you can really see what do people like more, what do they like. You get, unlike radio where the ratings and the information is a little foggier, you get immediate feedback on YouTube.
Right.
So that stuff just did better. So it kept doing it.
Right. And how do you create different perspectives? Because there's going to be few radio shows covering the 49ers. There's going to be the talk show. There's going to be all these different platforms covering them. How do you make sure you bring different intake to your show?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the 49ers, I'm sure the Bears, I haven't studied every fan base.
If you talk about the Bears, 9 out of 10, if you go to 9 out of 10 Chicago radio or YouTube shows, 9 out of 10 times the Bears will be the subject.
Yeah. And I don't know, like, how many, if you look at the Niners, there's going to be, there's a ton of people doing Niners. Obviously, there's a ton of people doing NFL. And then there's a ton of people doing Cowboys and Eagles and whatever. But I'm sure Niners is that way too. For me, I just try to be me. It's such cliche feedback and advice, but it really is true. And I feel like that can be a little different. Probably my background is probably different, just in terms of the specific stuff I do. So in terms of work and stuff that I've done. So I don't know. I just try to be the most authentic, do the most authentic stuff to me. What interests me. Like if it doesn't interest me, I can't make it interesting. If it's boring, then I can't. To me, like there's stuff that's interesting to other people that's not interesting to me.
Right.
And I would just, do the stuff that's interesting to you.
Right. And you do radio, you did radio, you do TV play-by-play, you've done pregame hosts. What do you think the difference is between all the medias, and how do you think it's important for someone who's getting into sports to be versatile and be able to do all those to advance in their career?
Yeah, I think that each thing helps another thing. So everything you do builds a strength for another, medium. So like I did radio shows for years where I wasn't doing as much play-by-play, even though I really wanted to do the play-by-play. And one thing I learned once I started doing more play-by-play was that doing the radio shows built a skill that really helped me. And I didn't really realize it until I was trying to get a job at the Pac-12 network. And the woman who was hiring, Kristen Bredis, she said, the head of talent, she said, I gave her a tape. It was like a bunch of highlights, and she said, send me something of you doing a blowout. And I thought it was genius of her. Like, let me see how you broadcast when the game's imperfect. And since that moment, I've taken a lot of pride in blowouts. Like I go into every game just with having thought about what if this is a 25-point football game or basketball game or whatever. And I think about it differently because I've spent 4 hours doing solo radio at night. Like, that is a grind. I would never go. I couldn't imagine going back to that. And it really, that's one way that one skill helped build another skill.
Right. And how do you prepare for these blowouts or just the game in general and digging deep and getting material that maybe someone else in your position wouldn't get?
I think, you hear athletes talk about visualization. I think that sort of thing works for broadcasting too. It's just, all right, I've seen enough games now. What are all the different directions this could go? If this is a close game, if this is a blowout. And for me, it's like basic stuff. It's just being aware. What else is going on in a league? What else is going on in a sport? What are the other big headlines? Okay, I'll go into a game. Like, a specific example would be if I'm doing a college football game on a Saturday, I'll go in with an understanding of what are the big games in the top 25 today. If it's a Big Ten network game, what are the big games of the Big Ten? If it's a Big 12 game on FS1, what are the other big 12 games today? And what are the other little milestones? And it's just thinking about, okay, how do we do 4 minutes of game time, which might be 9 or 10 or 12 minutes of real time? How do we do 12 minutes where we're just kind of weaving in that thing? So you can't overly plan it. I think it's just about kind of having a bunch of different little bullets you could shoot. And then when the moment arrives, you're like, okay, I have this, and this. I think C is going to fit here. So it's just about being prepared. And you don't want to force anything in, but it's just about kind of thinking about, okay, where could this go? If it goes here, what do I have? If it goes here, what do I have?
Right. And then for you called the Big Ten tournament this year, and that's game. And you don't have time to have a night just to prepare for 2 teams. You have to prepare for 6 to 8 teams that night. How do you prepare for the big scale and make sure you're not taking a team out of context here, but have enough for each one of the teams that you're covering?
Yeah, start early, so it helps. It's harder the further you get in the tournament. It really helped me this year. There's 18 teams in the league. I called 16 of their games. So there's only 2 teams I didn't see in person, Michigan and Maryland. And it so happened I didn't have either one of their games in the tournament. So it helped that I knew all these teams. I knew somebody with the team. I'd seen the players before. I knew some of their backgrounds. I knew how to get more information on them easily with a text or a phone call. Then it was working ahead, having stuff ready, having the basics ready, height, weight, high school, transfer, points per game, whatever, so that I could free myself up to find out some of the other stuff that's relevant. Tournaments are really fun, and you don't want to get stuck in like looking for something instead of just enjoying it. And that was part of it. I just went in with the mindset of like, okay, I know enough. Now let's just enjoy the fact that this is a basketball. These tournaments are so fun. And then there were some games that weren't great, and I was, ready for that. And that meant having some, enough background on maybe the postseason runs of each team. And then the team that's winning, you're talking about, 8 years ago they were here in Indy and they did this, or next up they're going to play this team. Here's how they played against them the first time they met, knowing what other games are happening and talking about some of those matchups. So, it's just about having enough background with the material that you can tap dance a little bit and go in a few different directions.
Right. And I think it definitely played a part for you. You covered all the teams that you were broadcasting, and you already had your basic boards made out for them. Height, weight, position, number. You already had that stuff. So it kind of gave you a little bit of freedom to find that extra story or two to maybe share if it's a blowout. And another thing for you, you were the Big Ten football voice too. How do you think the difference is between covering a football game on a Saturday for 3 hours or a basketball game on a Wednesday night in January?
People ask me all the time, like, they're just different. Football is a whole week of preparation for the game. Basketball's faster game, less preparation. Um, but football can be. It's not always the case. Some basketball games feel this way, but football feels, like more of an event. So, they're different because the sport is different. Like football has a certain rhythm to it that is very predictable. Here's the snap, here's the play, there's the tackle, analyst talks. All right, here we go, set it up, here's the snap, right? Basketball, I found as I was working and coming up, like to be a more challenging rhythm to get a feel for. And you still can get stuck. Like the last thing you want in basketball is to like nothing's happening. Tell a story. Oh no, some guy just had a dunk in the middle of the story. Like you don't want that. So, I think football is just everything is bigger because it's more and the game is longer. But I would say this, like basketball, basketball's got a ton of plays. Basketball probably has more plays than football if we look at possessions. I don't know. I have to think about that for a second. But anyway, I just think it's you just put more into football because it's a one a week. We're talking to 6 coaches during the week. It's a ton of preparation.
Right. You have a whole week. You start watching film Sunday. You you do prep with your partner that week. You talk with the coaches. You travel. It's all that
Right.
stuff.
I did for basketball. I stayed only on the West Coast until the Big Ten tournament. So that's why I got to see every team because I just did Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA, and then everybody else came through. Football was all over the place. So the travel was very different. And I think that's probably part of it. The more you are physically involved in something, just the more you're putting into it. So you're traveling on a Thursday to Lincoln, like you are all in for half the week, basically, right? Maybe the game's during the day and you fly out on a Saturday night, but maybe it's not. And you fly out Sunday morning. So that from that standpoint, it is like a full body, truly involvement in a football game.
Right. And then you have called football and basketball games with many different people. You have the analyst sitting right next to you. You have a guy in your ear that's telling you when you have to go to break. How do you maintain the connections with all the people you're calling with and adjust to the different personalities that you're with in the booth?
Yeah, it's really important to be flexible. I think it's really important to really talk to people off the air, so that you get to know them and you kind of get a sense for, how do I work with this person? And the best people are just the best people. Like they make you better, which is what when you're in that situation, it's a great feeling. But it's really important to kind of get to know people, know how they talk, know what frustrates them, know what they like, know what their strengths are. And that means, spending a lot of time talking during the week, like talking to my analyst and sideline reporter and producer. We talk a lot during the week. And so that helps us it's kind of like you're not going to sit down and practice doing the game, but we make faster decisions because of that, right? I know, or he knows where I'm going to go or where I'm trying to go. Or if I make a mistake, we already talked about that topic, so we can clean that up. There are times I love to surprise somebody, like if they trust me and I trust them, like surprise them with a piece of information. But the more you communicate leading up to the game, the more you can help them be their best and they can help you be your best.
Right. And how do you maintain those connections with the people that you're working with to have them on your podcast or for them to have a guest with as you on theirs, or just to further your connections in the sports media world?
It can be a variety of things. Like you just described a couple. It's just like calling people, texting, staying in touch, being friends. And like that stuff really helps. It really is true that being personally invested makes you professionally better.
Right. And then obviously the sports media world's very competitive. What do you think separates your broadcasting from every other person's broadcasting?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. I'll answer it by saying, like, sometimes people will ask me, who's the best at whatever going right now? And I you know those graphics where it's like a quarterback throwing and it's like the best piece of every quarterback, so it's like
Yeah.
Matthew Stafford's arm and Brock Purdy's brain, or whatever it is, but Patrick Mahomes' eyes, Patrick Mahomes' creativity. And I really think there's something from everybody. Like there's stuff you can get like, oh, that person does that really well, and that person does that really well, and this person does that really well. And I don't know. I don't know how to answer. I don't know what I do necessarily. I'll tell you what I focus on is I want somebody to watch one of my games and feel like it's an easy thing to listen. It's easy to listen. You're not getting bashed over the head with a performance. And then I really want to, and this goes back to my minor league baseball, is like if a guy hit his first career AAA home run, I wanted to be ready for that. And so I've always kind of thought about it as like, if somebody does something special, they have their memory, but I also want the clip that they have of that moment to also capture what's happening. And so, that's why it's really important for me to know who doesn't have a career catch or a touchdown, or what player on the bench in a basketball game has never scored. Because if that walk-on comes on the floor in a 40-point game and hits a three, all his teammates are going crazy. Like we need to understand why that's happening, right? So trying to prepare for those things is really important. But anyway, I don't know how to exactly answer that question other than to say like I focus on that, like being prepared, trying to be prepared for moments, and then trying to be an enjoyable, easy listen without you necessarily realizing that it's easy. That's my goal. That's my hope.
Right. And then you obviously sometimes when there's a big play, you need to bring out the energy. How do you put the energy out there and make sure that the fans know that that's a big play in this game?
I mean, that going back to think about being authentic, like that has to be really sincere. And it's really important for me to have a good audio mix in my headset. So I spent time before the game starts talking with the audio person, making sure that I'm hearing it, like the crowd and myself, I'm hearing everything right. Because then I can understand like what is coming through to the viewer. How much crowd are they getting? Is there a lot of crowd? How much me are they getting? And it's just a balance. Like you don't need to, just because it's big doesn't mean you need to be loud. Sometimes you are. Sometimes it's short. Sometimes it's long. It's just, you're just trying to match the moment, not overtake the moment. You want to be a complement to the crowd and to the pictures that are, if it's a big moment, probably really powerful, without crossing the line where now you have gone beyond, like you're not a compliment. So that's always the line you're trying to walk.
Right. And what is something that you wish someone would have told you earlier in your sports media career that you think would have helped you as you went on in this field?
Oh, I wish you told me that question in my earlier in my media career, because I could think about that. That's a great question. God, there's so many things that you learn. I mean, so you have to be an advocate for yourself. Like that's one thing. Finding a way to be an advocate without being, too much. I would say there really is. It's not that I wish someone had told me this. It's just you can't understand it till later, I think. Like early on, when I was young, I'd ask somebody for feedback and they would say, you just need more reps. And I used to hate that feedback. But it really is true. It's there. The more you do, the more you listen to yourself, the more you evolve. It is such true advice. There's just stuff you can't possibly be good at yet, because you can't be good at everything right away. You have potential. You can be really good, but you're just going to be better 5 years from now or 10 years from now, whatever. It doesn't mean the stuff you're doing now can't be great. it just means there is stuff you don't know yet. And once you know it, you'll be better, and you'll only know it by doing. Like, you only are going to learn it by doing it and figuring it out for yourself. So, I mean, the other thing, and I've said this to people who are your age or maybe a little older, like college students, I think one of the mistakes I would make when I wanted feedback, it's like, hey, here's my tape. What do you think? In hindsight, and you said this earlier, Hal, like, specific questions get specific answers. So, and I do this now with my buddies, is I don't send them a link to a game like, hey, what do you think of my game? No, I say, look at this very specific moment. What do you think? Or like, I'm constantly watching games and I'll see some situation that comes up that like I'm learning from a situation somebody else was put in, and I'll send it to a buddy or two and be like, how would you have, like, how do you think this should have gone? You know, so that's one. I wish somebody had said that to me when I said, hey, what do you think of my tape? I wish they'd respond and said, ask me a specific question, and then I can give you a specific answer. You know, because I don't know where you're at with kind of how you're evaluating yourself. And especially when you're young, like, I don't want to kill somebody. Like, I'm so critical of myself, and me and my buddies are so critical. Like, we can really say critical things to each other, but it's because I know that that they know they can say like, hey, what was this? But, it takes time to get to a place where like, you're really just kind of little tweaking stuff. But that would be one piece of advice. Like, hey, you watch yourself, you go, I didn't like this, but I'm not sure why or how I could have done it better. Here's a specific question. Give me some specific feedbacks. That's a long answer.
Yeah. No, it's good advice though. Good that you were able to share. And to end it off here, we got the final 14 questions. Doing them with everybody. So
is it speed round?
Speed round, final 14.
Okay.
Who's your idol?
Did you say who is or who was?
Who is?
In sports broadcasting?
Doesn't matter, just anything. Who's your idol?
I mean, like, as you get older, I think idol means something different. It means like mom and dad, grandpa. So I mean, that's the answer. From a sports broadcasting standpoint, when I was young, I would say like my inspiration as a kid was John Miller.
Favorite fast food?
I mean, In-N-Out, I have to say that.
Biggest fear?
Oh, boy, I mean, like drowning, shark attack.
Favorite school subject?
History, but I did take a history of rock and roll class once. That was awesome.
Favorite hobby?
You know what I love to do if, like, when I do basketball games, if the gym's empty and no one's going to be there for 20 minutes, I just love shooting free throws.
Favorite gym workout?
Ooh. You know what I started doing this season was like the stair stepper. And I was blown away with how like quick that heart rate can get going on that thing. That's an old man workout.
Favorite influencer?
Favorite influencer. That's a good one. You know what I love right now are those two, are they Australian guys who like they like reenact every big call by lip syncing it?
I know who you're talking about. Like, and they have like a filter on that like makes their chin kind of look bigger sometimes.
It's just two dudes. One's always the play-by-play guy. One's always the analyst, and they'll be doing like, what did they do the other day? The Josh Giddey.
They do a ton of Adam Amin stuff. So
yeah. They did that. Yeah, they did the Eric Collins. They did a lot of Eric Collins, but the Josh Giddey Lakers one was amazing. Stacey King.
Yeah. Favorite musician?
Oh, I'm listening to a lot of Zach Bryan right now.
Favorite animal?
I mean, dog.
Favorite TV show?
One show that's excellent right now, I think, is The Studio.
Biggest pet peeve.
The word super. Like, oh, I'm super hot right now. I'm super this coffee's super good. We have a word already. It's called very. Or you can just say good. It's good.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
Favorite emoji?
What do I use the most? I mean, definitely just the eyes, the two eyes looking to the side.
And then last but not least, are you a shower singer?
No. I'm a shower music listener. I'm a daily singer, and it drives my wife crazy because I'm not a good singer.
Like a drum, baby, don't stop beating. Like a drum, baby, don't stop beating.